Hey Wargamers, in Chapter Approved 2018 we finally got rules for using the 8 in match play. So the 8 are Commander Farsight and his elite retinue. And so today we're going to talk about my general impressions and how you might want to bring the 8 if you elect to do so. Before we do that though, I want to say thanks for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and hit subscribe. That way you don't miss any of my upcoming 40K content. Okay, so I did a prediction video where I went over all the loadouts of the members of the 8 and talked about them. And for the most part I was wrong. I was right in some places, but if you want to go watch that, that will give you a little bit more detail. Today we're going to focus mostly on the new things and talk about their strengths and weaknesses. So starting off with how you actually bring the 8, this is an area where I was super wrong. Basically, you bring them as a single auxiliary detachment, which normally would cost you 1 CP instead of gaining you CP, but because the 8 are so beefy, you actually have to give up 3 CP to bring them. They also have a couple other, caveats on how you might use them using the given rules. They ignore the commander limitation, which is good. And notably, it doesn't restrict you from bringing other commanders. So you could still bring other commanders outside of this detachment. It says explicitly just that the commander limitation does not apply or does not consider these models. So you can bring other commanders outside of this detachment. This is notable because commanders are obviously good. And that's why there's a limit on them, is because they are so good. And you're going to want to bring some better commanders in addition to the commanders that you have here, because in general, the loadouts of the 8 are not optimal. And so supplementing the 8 with some external commanders is going to be to your benefit in general. And also because if you're bringing Farsight Enclaves, that would leave you with only 1 HQ choice, right? You can't bring Ethereals, and if you can't bring commanders, then you're stuck with a Cadre Fireblade, and that means that at most you could bring 1 battalion. So that's an important distinction that I just wanted to make right off the bat, is that you can bring other commanders outside of the 8. The detachment as a whole, aside from costing you 3 CP, also brings a price tag of 1,120 points. So, not super expensive. It's going to be half your army at least in most cases, but you actually get a lot of commanders for that price. So what does the 8 actually entail? Well, it starts off with Farsight, obviously. He is completely unchanged, no buffs, no changes, just Commander Farsight. Then you have Commander Brightsword, who has Fusion Blades, a target lock, counterfire defense system, and 2 shield drones. Commander Bravestorm has a plasma rifle, flamer, onager gauntlet, shield generator, and advanced targeting system. He also has iridium armor and has 2 gun drones. Notably, there's actually a advent calendar book about Bravestorm and the use of the onager gauntlet. So if you're interested in that, it's like $5. You can check that out. Chasseau Savastos is equipped with plasma rifle, flamer, shield generator, drone controller, and 2 gun drones. Chasseau Arakan has an airburst fragmentation projector, cyclic ion blaster, plasma rifle, and counterfire defense system. Also has 2 gun drones. Subcommander Torchstar has 2 flamers, advanced targeting system, and a drone controller, and 2 marker drones, which are super helpful with that flamer loadout. Broadside Shazvray Oblatai has 2 high-yield missile pods, 2 smart missile systems, a seeker missile, and a velocity tracker. And then Ovesa has an ion accelerator, 2 fusion blasters, target lock, and early warning override, and 2 shielded missile drones. I should mention, of course, that Oblatai is a broadside and Ovesa is a riptide. So that's their general loadout. Again, basically the same as before in terms of weapons. The support systems changed a little bit, but really the weapon profiles, the things that really identify each of those units, is exactly the same. What makes them different than before is their new special rules, and a lot of that happens because the war gear that they had previously doesn't exist or is now stratagems, and so a lot of those things that they had that really made them iconic or, actually gave them some character before are now special rules. And again, this is an area where I was a little optimistic in where we were going to actually see these rules go. For the most part, they're just, copy paste from the actual war gear that they would otherwise have, that sort of thing. So for Farsight, he has the same abilities. Brightsword has Warscaper drones, which used to be a really cool upgrade that you could apply just to a drone, and now it just says that if a charge is declared for an enemy unit whilst it is within 12 inches of either Brightsword's shield drones, subtract 2 from the roll. So it's not dissimilar from some of the rules that we see in the hazard suits from Forge World, and that's pretty useful. I mean, if we're thinking about Farsight Enclave's armies being in close proximity to enemies, being able to subtract 2 is actually very useful. Of course, Tau are not particularly good in close combat. Farsight are slightly better, but not outrageously so. So a lot of these units actually don't want to be in combat or want to be selective in when they are in combat. So having the ability to avoid combat is desirable. So I think there's actually a lot of value in that. Unfortunately, it's limited just to 2 shield drones, and shield drones are meant to die. So you have to basically stop using them as shield drones if you want to preserve this ability. Bravestorm has advanced support cocoon, which I love that it's a cocoon, but this is 6-up, feel no pain. He used to have a stimula injector, so it totally makes sense that he has this role. Notably, other units, other members of the 8 that had the stimula injector don't have this role. He's the only one that gets it. Savastos has Pure Tide Engram Neurochip. It's exactly the same thing as the normal Pure Tide Engram Neurochip, but this is a special rule and not a relic, not a signature system. Of course, you can't bring another signature system because of the rules associated with bringing this detachment. You're limited to just the signature systems, so no double dipping on Pure Tide Engram Neurochips, unfortunately. Ericon has Repulsor Impact Field. If a enemy unit ends a charge move within 1 inch of Ericon, roll a d6 on a 2-up, they suffer a mortal wound. Mortal wounds are nice, so cool. I'm fine with that. Torchstar has Neuroweb System Jammer. This is different than the Stratagem. Essentially, it just means that the enemy can't deep strike within 12 inches of Torchstar, which is good, right? Because again, we want to be selective in when we are engaging, and so being able to prevent the enemy from deep striking a unit right on top of you is really good. But we're also dealing with a flamer unit, so they're not going to be able to reach necessarily right off the bat anyway. So you'd have to obviously move, and then you can use your flamer. But yeah, it's good, but not amazing. Oblatai has advanced scan feeds, basically target lock, so Oblatai can move and shoot. I think this is probably the best special rule that Oblatai could have in terms of ignoring penalties to move, because again, one of the big weaknesses of broadsides is their mobility, and so this is a fantastic way to get around that. You're not giving up a warrior slot, you have the special rule. If I could bring Oblatai just as an independent character, which of course you can't, you have to bring all of these as one detachment, I would, because that's a fantastic loadout for a broadside. Oblatai, probably the best of the 8 in a lot of ways. Ovesa maintains the Earthcast pilot array. This was a piece of war gear that was really valuable and made Ovesa basically the number 1 pick for the 8 if you were bringing them independently in the past. And so you would see Ovesa a lot by himself. And this essentially works. This is one place that I was actually, I think, kind of right in my prediction video. Earthcast Pilot Array allows you to reroll hits of 1 for attacks made by Ovesa in shooting. And then when he uses his Nova Reactor ability, on a 4-up, you ignore the mortal wound. So I think this is also really good. But of course, Ovesa has the Ion Accelerator, not a heavy burst cannon, and I would rather have the heavy burst cannon. So, yeah. All right, so in general, if you're going to be bringing the 8, how might you want to do that? Well, ideally, you'd probably pair them with a different Sept tenant and a different detachment, but really, if we're, taking these guys because we like Farsight Enclaves, we're going to bring another Farsight Enclaves detachment. And really, I think the biggest weaknesses in this detachment are that it lacks a lot of punching power. We do have the Fusion Blades, we do have Ovesa, but really we would want a little bit more reliability in those things. So taking something that's going to give us a little bit more oomph and a little bit more of a front line is going to be important. Notably, these are all characters, except for the drones, and so they can be, they're not going to be able to block for each other. You can't have a character block for another character in terms of target priority. And so you need to have some sort of durable front line there to avoid having the enemy just pick apart your commanders in the order that appeals to them. You need something to force them to shoot at something other than your commanders before they can actually reach your most valuable members of the 8. And so for that reason, I think things like drones are going to be really valuable. Things like Riptides are going to be valuable. And then even things like piranhas are going to actually fit pretty well in this list. The reason for that is because piranhas are fast. They're going to be able to keep up with these suits, and they're going to be able to be a somewhat durable front line. Piranhas are not super durable. They are going to die very quickly when they are the only thing that stands between your enemy and shooting at the things they want to shoot at. But they still have a fair number of wounds. So having some piranhas out there isn't bad. And if they survive, they can do things like capturing objectives. But yeah, in general, I think having a little bit more of a front line, having a little bit more punching power is going to be good. We actually have a fair number of flamers and flamers with advanced targeting systems on top of that. So we're pretty good at taking out mass infantry, especially orcs, of course, because we're Farsight. We're going to have an advantage there. So taking out mass infantry really isn't a weakness of the 8. The bigger weakness is taking out those more specialized, highly durable units. And so if I'm going to be building a list around the 8, I'm going to take the 8, and that gives me about 880 points to spend. So I'm going to try to offset the points that I lose by taking the 8, the command points that I lose by taking the 8, by taking 2 battalions. Each of those is going to have a Fireblade and then a Cold Star with 4 Fusion Blasters, because again, if we're looking for punching power, it's a great option. And then I'm going to fill out the rest of the army list with strike teams and shield drones and maybe a piranha or 2. And that's going to be my whole list. So it's actually fairly compact. You do have a lot of commanders, of course, but we can offset some of those weaknesses by taking select other commanders and then taking drones and things to block and capture objectives. So I think that list would address some of the weaknesses of the 8. However, in general, the 8 is clearly meant to be a fluffy army choice. It's not a competitive choice. It's not something you're going to take to go to a GT expecting to win. What it is something that we've all wanted and can now play with and have fun with. But if we look at the point breakdown, basically summing up the point efficiency for everything against a variety of targets, we see that against things like broadsides with high yield missile pods, the 8 is between 25 and 50% less efficient than just taking broadsides. You could take 1,200 points of broadsides and do about 50% more damage on average across the slew of enemies that you might face. So if you're looking for a competitive list, don't take the 8, just take 1,200 points of broadsides. Not that taking 1,200 points of broadsides is going to give you all the tactical flexibility of the 8 or other options, but just on a numbers perspective, the 8 are not very compelling. So for that reason, I'm probably not going to take the 8 unless I'm looking just to have a fun, very casual game. But the loadouts are cool, the special rules are cool, and I'm excited that they put it in Chapter Approved. I'm glad that they did this. This is the sort of thing that we want to see in Chapter Approved, and I would much rather them do this than just completely ignore the 8 and not produce anything. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you excited about the 8? Are you planning on using them? If so, let me know how. And of course, happy wargaming. Hey everyone, this video is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our community over there as well. Special thanks to No Excuses Panda, Scott Heater, Tao Oswell, Nick Steele, Jared Egler, Scott J. Smith, Stephen Cohen, Brian Mann, Jake Johnson, Eric Jackson, Benjamin, RP, Julian Peck, Andy M. Young, Peter Benjamin Parker, and Giovanni DiMaggio.